Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with two very special guests. Our first guest today is Christine Arylo, and she's here to share with us her new book, Overwhelmed and Over It. Embrace your power to stay centered and sustained in a chaotic world. Now, Christine is a transformational leader, advisor, 3 times best-selling author, and show host. She is recognized worldwide for her work helping women to make shifts happen in the lives they lead, the work they do, and the world they wish to create. So let's welcome to the show, Christine Arylo.
Thank you, Marianne, and hello, everyone. It's great to be with you all today.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here to talk about this new book. You know, I have to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, this book has been 10 years in the making, depending on when you start counting. 10 years in the making, 3 years in the writing. And I would take this all the way back probably to 1 or 2 pivotal moments when I realized that the way that I had been trained to work and succeed and achieve and take care of a very full life was basically not sufficient. It was really a setup for burnout and overwhelm. And no matter how much I worked and how much I did and how much I tried, it's like I couldn't figure out the equation. You know, it's kind of like I felt like Einstein trying to figure out EMC squared. I'm like, why? No matter what I do, I end up burned out or overwhelmed or, stretched too thin or sacrificing what I need. And I remember meeting a dear friend of mine, Christine Carlson, who wrote the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series with her husband, Richard. And this was about 10 years ago. And she'd been writing books, for 20 years previously. And she had written a book about not sweating the small stuff for women in the late 80s, early 90s. And I remember reading the first part of her book chapter. And it said something like, I was driving down the street the other day and I saw a bumper sticker, and the bumper sticker said, I am woman, I am strong, I'm invincible. And Chris said in the book, and I added, and I am tired. And I had this moment of epiphany, you all, where I was like, wait a second, this woman wrote this book in the late 80s, early 90s. People have been talking about stress management and work-life balance forever. And something's not changing. What is that? I mean, we're smart, intelligent women, but we're still, in fact, actually more stressed and more stretched too thin. 1 in 3 women are dying of heart disease. That number used to be 1 in 4. And I'm like, there's something deeper going on here, and I need to figure out what it is. And that set me off on what's now been 10 years of research and experimenting and doing things differently. And about 3 years ago, I knew I was ready to write the book. And here we are in a time that a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed.
For sure. And a lot of people are looking at their lives right now going, do you know what? Do I really need to, commute to this job to kind of work at home? Or they're making adjustments where before that wasn't even possible.
Well, as I was finishing the final book edits this spring, around March and April, I was like, oh my gosh, look what's happening. I'm like, I think people might finally believe that what I've been talking about for 10 years is actually possible. Because a lot of the work I do with women in personal transformation or in leadership is we actually have the power within us to create different ways of working and living and leading. We just don't realize how much power we have because we've been having to assimilate into ways of working and getting up early and going to commute and taking our kids to school that people are barely keeping their heads above the water. So we don't have time to look around and be like, could it be different? It's just been really challenging. And the gift of 2020 has been to really open up not just, people's eyes, but organizations and systems eyes. Why are we working this way? Why have we designed the way we live this way? And I think that's the possibility we all stand at right now. And I'm excited to be able to have a path and a way of thinking about things that can help us as women and men and beings reimagine and redesign the way we work and live to be more sustainable.
Do you feel that this time has really offered an opportunity for people to kind of sit about their life purpose and redesign that as well?
Absolutely. I believe that all social and systemic change starts in personal transformation. And I think a lot of the models that we've gotten about how we have to design our lives and what success looks like are completely distorted in our world. And so we have the slowdown. I mean, what the pandemic has done is it's really caused people to have to slow down. And when you slow down, you kind of have two choices. One, you can continue to distract yourself, watch Netflix all the time and keep busy, or, whatever the case may be. Nothing against Netflix. Occasionally I have my Netflix binge, which is okay. You just can't do it every day. But if you take what's happening right now and you really use the slowdown as a way to go deeper and to really deepen into what really matters for you, to go deeper into like, what is the part that you're here to play in your work, to get clear on what's the life design that you really want. And it's a big part of the new book, Overwhelmed and Over It. The first chapter or the first section is all about redesigning the constellation of your life to really step out of work-life balance as this ridiculous equation that makes no sense, because in that equation you have work and then everything else fits into life. And for any of you that are parents out there, I think you probably would agree with me that parenting is work. But in the current model, it doesn't get put over there, right? It's just like everything else. And so I think that this is a lot of my work in my own personal journey has been to teach women that it's safe to slow down. And when we slow down and we drop beyond just the mental mind that's kind of programmed to mirror what it sees out there as success, we get really clear about what success is for us, and then we start designing our lives differently. And that's what's called the superpower of harmonic defiance.
I love that. I love that. Well, and I love how you have your book set up. I mean, chapter 1, you talk about do, be, and have it all as far as having something to release and embrace, choose what's right for you. And it really gives people an opportunity to kind of think through what we've been taught as far as programmed is like, hey, this is how life has to be, to look at the possibilities of life, what life could be for you.
And we're not even conscious about it, Marianne and everyone else. I mean, that's what's so crazy about it. It's like the things that we're conscious of how much something's not working for us. Like we could think about that in a time we've made a change in a relationship, or we've made a job, or we've had a health crisis and we've had to make a change. Like usually things have to get to that dramatic of a level sometimes for us to wake up and be like, oh my God, this isn't working for me. But for so many of us, because everyone around us is just doing the same thing, like we just go to work together and we do the same thing and we just educate our kids this way, and healthcare, all the systems are just like, we're almost like, I call it like, it's like a TikTok robot, mentality where we're just going through this routine of our lives. And when I was early in the journey of this research, I knew I needed to find out where this do, be, and have it all kind of model for success came from. Because I'm like, this just doesn't seem like the equation we should be running. Like it's clearly not working. And so I'm like, I need to talk to the women that were part of the last kind of rising of women's rights and equality and all of that. And so I was fortunate enough to have an intimate lunch with Gloria Steinem. I ended up being able to have a one-on-one conversation with her. And I said to her, Gloria, what's up here? Why did we get this message to do, be, and have it all? And she looked at me. We were sitting next to each other on a set of chairs. And I think she even took my hand in her hand. And she said, Christine, that was never the message. The message was, you can do anything that you set your heart to that is in alignment for you, but you have to make choices. And Marianne, everyone, I looked at her, my head kind of cocked, I'm like, choices? Like, I'm like, Gloria, we didn't get that other half of the memo. I'm like, my generation did not get that. We've not gotten that. And she went, and I'm like, why is that? Why didn't we get this message? Like from an early age of like, make choices, know what's right for you. And she said, she kind of deadpan looked at me. She goes, Christine, the systems didn't change when we got more rights. We got go out women in the world, you can work and you can, take care of the kids and fry up the bacon, all these things. She said, but the systems didn't change. They just basically said, okay, ladies, you just have to do more. And so we did, because we didn't have women or conscious beings and, allies in places of power or authority or influence to make changes. So I don't know if you remember this, Marianne, or anyone else, but, we put shoulder pads on and women cut their hairs and wore bow ties and looked like men, and we played the game.
That was a horrible style. I hated those.
I know, it's so bad. I know sometimes I'm like, never bring back the 80s, ever.
Why did we have to look like linebackers? I don't get it,
I don't know. I had a lot of shoulder pads. I do remember that, with the double-breasted jacket and suit. And so we basically got trained that we needed to succeed at a game that was never built for our best interests, not even women's best interests, humans' best interests. It was never built for that. The game that's being played and we're seeing crumbling around us is one that's based on competition and consumption and accumulation and grow, be the biggest, be the best, power over. And it's part of what we're seeing and what's happening societally and globally is those structures are falling apart because they actually don't serve humanity. They don't serve the planet. They don't serve a world that is really rooted in wellness and wholeness and interconnectedness and sustainability. And so we have to change the way we work and we live and we organize our organizations and the way we think about education and healthcare. So one piece that I'd just like to say to everybody is we're watching things crumble around us, and we're dealing with real things that, in my experience, a lot of people haven't been prepared for. I'm lucky. About 20 years ago, I had a big wake-up call from the universe that kind of, kicked me off the escalator to death of the do be and have it all model. And I had to do some really deep internal personal work. And I also really started exploring what are called wisdom traditions that are based in the yogic sciences and the sacred feminine and indigenous wisdom, and just seeking a different way to be. So I've had about 20 years to learn how to be with uncertainty and to create from what you can't see. So a lot of people are experiencing levels of stress because they don't know how to operate. We don't have the tools. And the good news is there are tools out there. The good news is we are moving through a transformation. And just like personal transformation, we're just having a collective global one. And I believe that we can get through this on the other side. But for any of you who had a personal transformation, whether it was through health or a job loss or just something that you changed that wasn't totally in your control, you ended up on the other side. We were okay, and you actually were probably better for it. And I think that's what's possible. And that's what overwhelmed and over it. In my work, I can't even believe I started writing this 3 years ago, because I'm like, this is exactly how we get to the place where we can actually create personal sustainability so that the way we work and live and operate as a society sustains the planet and the people on it.
What a better place to be, because before, we look in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, it's all about corporations, making money, and there's nothing wrong with making money, but just corporations. And it was very, kind of cutthroat and dog eat dog and, good luck making it out there. A lot of it also, because in the 70s, women were kind of getting into the workforce more so, 60s and 70s. They were kind of allowed, and I'm doing air quotes on that, to kind of enter that, and so what a great place to be in. When you were doing your research for this book, was there anything that you discovered, that just kind of surprised you? Because, I read your book and I learned a lot. I really did.
I think so yes, there were many things. There were many things that surprised me. And I think the one thing about this work, I experiment on myself. And then I have had amazing women that have, that I participate in my programs and different things that have kind of been like the laboratory. We've been working this for many years. It allowed me to, condense it into these 12 imprints that I've found that are kind of basically at the root. I'm all about get to the root of what is the reason, the underlying root that causes us to drive and strive and grind. And no matter how much we do as women, we just feel like I'm not doing enough and I should be doing more. And if we're not working, we feel guilty for not working. Or if we're, we run around talking about how busy we are, and we create what was the biggest surprise. It's easy in some ways to look at what I call the systemically generated pressure that leads to burnout and overwhelm and exhaustion and unstable and unsustainable realities. But the harder place to look is how we do it to ourselves. The harder place to look is how we ourselves, Marianne, you and me and every person listening right now, how we create realities that actually lead to overwhelm, burnout, self-sacrifice, and sickness. I mean, women are, and not just women, but men too. I mean, the level of, whacked out thyroids and depression and anxiety and cancer and all of these things that we just have almost like has become normal. Like, oh, you have anxiety? Like, oh, me too. Or you have depression? Oh, me too. And it's like taking a step back and looking like there are, if we think about like, oh my God, I have to change the system out there. How am I going to do that? That's like so overwhelming. But when I know for myself, when I started looking at the ways I had ascribed my own sense of worth to how much I achieved or how many people I supported, or I ascribed my sense of safety and security to, a corporate paycheck. That's my background. I worked in corporate for 15, 20 years. Or I set up my own, when I became an entrepreneur, and I looked around how I set up my whole business and organization to be completely unsustainable, and all it sustained on me. And I think that's the hardest part, is to actually, that's where the power comes from, why the subtitle of the book is Embrace Your Power, to stay centered and sustained in a chaotic world. Because it's easier to kind of look out there and see what's wrong or feel like a victim or you can't change it. But when you start to really look within and you start to get deeper into what I call the imprints, the beliefs, the emotions, the physical cellular pieces, and you start to be like, oh, I have to shift in here, and I have more power than I think. It really pushes you to an edge that a lot of people would rather not deal with. And now it's like, I think we either embrace it or continue to create patterns of suffering and anxiety and all of the other things that just are no longer sustainable for us.
I would agree with you 100%. I mean, you look right now and, just about everybody I know has something going on, and a lot of it is this time that we have is giving us the opportunity to look deep inside and go, okay, what changes do I need to make? Otherwise you're right, we could just kind of keep, kind of battling around with, what is and be miserable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I think we also, an important thing I'd like to just share with everybody is that there are big design changes that need to happen in our society and all of our systems, healthcare, government, corporate, the whole shebang needs to be shifted around, right? I mean, that's a must. But all systemic and social change must be rooted in personal transformation, or else it doesn't last. And it's just too, like, we all have a part to play in that, Marianne. You have a part, I have a part, everyone listening, you have a part. And one of the last part of the book is about liberating your power and really standing in your part and choosing not to kind of waste your chi, waste your life force on stuff that you can't change, or, like raging against the machine, or like, just wasting all that chi, but getting really clear on like, what is my part to play to give to the world? And what is my part to play to change how I live, so that how I live actually creates harmony? This is this power of harmonic defiance. So we hear a lot about balance, 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 balance. Balance is not the goal for how you design and constellate and manage your life. If you were to put your two hands out like a scale, right? That's the scale. That's balance, equilibrium, where the goal is to create, a static stillness. Marianne, your life, my life, none of our lives we need to cultivate stillness within us, so we feel balanced within us. But we need to create and design lives and ways of working and organizing and relating that are dynamic and diverse, and allow the whole person to go to work, allow the whole person to like show up. Like, we can't keep, segmenting ourselves into these little parts. It's like we can't have a society that really creates wholeness instead of oppression and all that other stuff if we don't create lives that way. And the power I would love to just give to all of you, so it doesn't become. I have two things I'd love to just share, Marianne. Would that be okay? Like two little pieces.
I'd love for you to. Yes.
Because I'm all about like whoosh, open up our eyes, everyone. Wake up to what's going on around you. Wake up to what's going on within you, and then like let's bring it down and make it really really practical. So the superpower of harmonic defiance, I keep talking about, like you could write those words down, harmonic defiance. What that is the choice to defy the systems and ways of working, living, operating, and relating that don't work for you by making choices that actually lead to harmony, wholeness, wellness, sustainability, interconnectedness. Goes all the way back to the conversation that I shared with you about Gloria. Make choices. And these are choices, big choices in how you design your life, the choices that you choose to not follow conventional wisdom, instead follow your wisdom. Like I can look back in my career and I could tell you like 4 specific, not just pivot points really, but like making a choice to not follow what everyone else was doing because I looked ahead and I'm like, I could do that, but that's a path for burnout and self-sacrifice. And I would make a different path and I would make a different choice. So in those big choices, but I want to bring it down to the smaller choices in one simple but significant way. So it's all about simple and significant ways you can start to make shift in how you go about creating harmony in your daily life. And the one I would offer to all of us, and here's my question for all of you. What are you doing, ingesting, interacting with in the first hour of your day? What are you interacting with, ingesting the first hour of your day? And you don't have to raise your hand, but let me just ask this question too, a follow-up question. How many of you have checked your email, gone online, access social media, turned on the television, turned on the radio, started work in that first hour of your day before brushing your teeth, peeing, going to taking care of your body, acknowledging, standing on the earth, like connecting with yourself? Marianne, have you ever? Have you ever? My hands
I'm sure you're getting a lot of hands going up. It's a quiet group of hands going up, but I'm sure everyone has done that. But you know, it's interesting. You're so right, because we're so detached when we do that. We're not being in the moment.
Well, what happens is if you connect with the outside world before you connect with your inside world, and you basically have just opened up your field for everyone else's energy to come in. And you have now set your focus for focusing out there versus in here. So like a lot of the anxiety people are feeling is because they don't know how to set, if you don't know how to set what's called your magnetic field, if you're not practicing what I call the 4 points of connection, where you're connecting, you're connecting to spirit, you're connecting to earth, you're connecting to yourself, you're connecting to support. Like there are these different practices of like thinking about or protecting your energy field. I was doing a mentoring session with a woman leader that I worked with yesterday. We just started working together, and she was explaining all these, dramatic things that were happening in her life and how she was feeling spun out. And I asked her, I said, well, did you protect your energy field this morning? Do you have an energy protection practice? And she's so funny. She lives in Denver. She looked at me. She's like, Christine, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm like, exactly. Okay, well, I got 3, I have 3 things we need to teach you right now. You can do this in, a minute or less. And the thing is, for everyone, I don't know how to stay out of burnout or even help you stay out of overwhelm or burnout or anxiety or what I call the Twizzlers effect, because of the chaos in the world. If you don't have a consistent morning practice flow that you do every day that connects you, protects your energy field, and sets your field. And it's not about doing more. It's just about doing that first hour of your day differently. And so if you have a consistent practice and you already know exactly what I'm talking about, keep it up, strengthen it, high 10s to you. There was a time I didn't have it. I remember when I first started meditating, I basically fell asleep drooling on myself. So, I grew up in Chicago. I didn't know anything about energy. So if it's new to you, great. You're like, okay, I hear Christine, what she's saying. Everybody, the things you do in the first hour of your day set your field for the rest of the day. And if you're not setting, connecting, and protecting, you're like a windsock with no pole.
Yeah, what a great perspective at looking at that, because a lot of times people don't realize how important that is to have that separation in just that time.
Well, because it seems this is the piece about small but significant. The practices that I teach, they can seem so small that people dismiss them. Like, oh, okay, that's nice lady. Thank you very much. I'll try to pay attention, right? Or any of these little practices that I teach for what I call bookending your day, how you start your day and how you downshift your day. And I always say, and I'll say it to all of us, do not discount simplicity for lack of significance. And it's
That would
not
be true.
and it's not, people are like, well, I don't know how to meditate, and I don't have time to sit on. I'm like, I don't sit on a cushion for an hour a day. There are days my practice is 3 minutes, but I do all the parts I know I need to do, and it makes such a difference. And I think that would be my invitation to you all: start noticing what you're doing in the first hour of your day, and ask yourself, is this draining me, or is this sustaining me? And just notice what happens to your energy field and to your own being, your own emotions, your own mind when you reach for that phone and you let the outside world in. Just start to notice. And do the same on the other side, the last hour of your day. Those two, the first hour and the last hour, make like huge difference.
So, Christine, do you think that's one of the places where people get hung up the most, or is there another area where you see people really kind of struggling with?
Yeah, that's foundational, and it's small and it's significant. The other part is the pressure we put on ourselves for how fast we should be able to do something, how much we should be able to do. And it's like we create all of this, what I call toxic time pressure. So time pressure can be healthy and time pressure can be toxic. And I'm a sufferer. I don't know if any of you, Marianne, I don't know if you're a member of the Impatience Club, but I'm a lifelong card carrying member.
I'm sure I have a chapter.
And it's like this is that big part of like looking at how we create our own pressure by like, we have to achieve this goal at this time, or this milestone at this time, or we think we should be able to get 10 things done in a day, trying to stuff 100 pounds of potatoes in a 10-pound bag. Or we try to get things done too fast. So instead of having like the 6,000 feet it takes for a plane to take off, we give ourselves 100 feet of runway. And so this is one of the big pieces that I love to teach people, because there's all this focus on like focus and productivity and time management and stress management. And that's a good foundation, but we have to go to a different level of thinking, because we're not machines, you all. We are not productivity machines. We are human beings who work much more like the natural world, like the water. It ebbs and it flows. The sun rises, the sun sets. There's a yearly, there's the seasons, and we grow out in the summer and we come back in the winter, and our lives are not set up that way. And so a big piece of my work and my practice is working within and learning how the natural cycles actually work, and then applying it to how I plan, how I focus, and really challenging myself about when I feel that pressure, when you can feel the pressure in your body, knowing how your body feels, knowing how your emotion feels. I always say, know your mind, know your heart, know your body, and know what the signs are that you're creating what I call fabricated pressure about how much you should be able to do, how much fast you should be able to do it, et cetera, et cetera. Know what that feels like in your heart, your mind, and your body. And then you got to slow down. Everyone take an exhale. And just close your eyes for a moment and just feel wherever that's happening in your life right now. Just someplace you're feeling pressure or putting pressure on yourself, a judgment that you're not doing it fast enough or right, or you should be able to do more. And just release yourself from that pressure. Just say, I release myself from the pressure, to find what is really in the flow. Like, what's in the flow for what you can accomplish today, and what can be reflowed to another time, or could be let go. The reflow and the let go. What can be reflowed? What can be let go? And take another exhale. And just take a moment, put your hand on your heart. And just hear these words. You are doing enough. You are doing enough. In any ways in which you're pressuring yourself to do more, just let it go. Yes, there's more to be done. Yes, there's more to happen, but you can just let it go and really feel that you are making a difference right now, that you are held, that you are guided, that you are sustained. And that the more you slow down to tune into your body, your heart, the more the path of how to step forward in a way that's aligned for you and sustainable will show itself. So in the moments you feel the pressure or things start to spin up or spin out, hear my words, slow down, reflow, or let go.
Oh, I just love that. You could feel that release happen when you go through that process. My goodness, Christine, we can talk all day. I mean, there's so much great information in your book. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about Overwhelmed and Over It?
Well, the best way to connect to me, thank you for asking, the best way to stay connected to me is you can just go to my website. It has everything on it, ChristineArylo.com, and that's ARYLO.com. I do a weekly podcast called Feminine Power Time. So for those of you who like podcasts or would just like to stay connected, it's one of my favorite things to do because we can have these kinds of conversations. And so you can search for that on your podcast app. And then if you go to the book site, overwhelmedandoverit.com, that has the book and all the information on there. And also on my website, there's a place where you can sign up to get what I call the daily morning flow practice, which has a video and a small booklet to help you create that morning practice and do the set, connect, protect practice that we talked about.
Well, Christine, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you for gathering the people to for us to be together as we go through this transformational time. And thank you all for tuning in to listen. I really feel like together we are shifting and changing, and we will make it through this. And I think wherever we end up, we're all going to be able to look back and be like, woo, that was a lot, but we are better. We are better for it.
We'll get through this together for sure. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you, Christine, and talk about your new book, Overwhelmed and Over It. Overwhelmed and Over It is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And of course, you can get it on Kindle, so you can start downloading and reading tonight. And also, the book is available at newworldlibrary.com. Again, if you'd like to connect with Christine, you can at ChristineArylo.com for more information. Have you ever wondered if failing is really the catalyst for your success? You'll want to stay tuned for our next special guest, Luke Reynolds, who's here to share with us his new book, Fantastic Failures, True Stories of People Who Changed the World by Falling Down First. On that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place, here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our next special guest, Luke Reynolds, and he's here to share with us his new book, Fantastic Failures, True Stories of People Who Changed the World by Falling Down First. Now, Luke is a passionate believer in the power of stories that transform lives, especially stories that help us understand that we all fail and flounder sometimes. Luke has been a public school English teacher at both the secondary and middle school levels, and he is currently an assistant professor of education at Endicott College. He completed his PhD at Boston College and focuses on teaching, writing, and reading as the three crucial paths towards compassion, kindness, and connection. So let's welcome to the show, Luke Reynolds.
Thanks so much for having me on, Marianne.
What an honor it is to spend this time with you, Luke. You know, I am so impressed with this book. I think it's something that everyone should pick up and read. And I have to ask, what inspired you to write this book?
I think the core inspiration really was my seventh grade students. I was a seventh grade teacher before I switched to now work with college students. And my middle school students consistently came to school with a sense that they were not good enough, that somehow there was something fundamentally wrong with them. They either weren't as outgoing as they wanted to be. They didn't look the way they wanted to. They made too many mistakes. They felt like they weren't popular. They didn't make a certain team. They didn't get a certain grade. All of these standards that they felt they were flailing and failing. And I began to just think that something's fundamentally wrong here. And we need to raise kids to realize, yes, you make mistakes, but that's okay. So do we all. And so that was really the genesis of this book.
Well, I think that's a lesson for people of any age, because if you look back, there are generations of people that feel that way because they've just been kind of brought up to feel like, they have these high standards that they have to meet. And sometimes you're like, where do you get these from?
Yeah. I completely agree. And I think those standards get, sort of passed on, whether implicitly or explicitly. We, as teachers and parents and coaches, we might say, hey, it's okay to make a mistake. And then when we really interact with kids, and I have to call myself on this sometimes, we sort of sometimes say by our actions, no, it's not. You think of a coach in any sort of competition, there's a certain amount of frustration that happens when an athlete doesn't perform perfectly. And I think in life, we kind of carry that internally. We expect ourselves to perform perfectly every time. And there's this real lie we really have to work towards in ourselves and in our kids to say, you know what, amazing people who do great things in this world fail so often. They miss shots. They miss the pirouette. They miss the great chess move. They just get it wrong over and over again. But what they do is they don't let it define them.
What an important lesson that is. And to really see, in this book, you have so many great stories. I was, a couple of them I knew, and there's quite a few I didn't. And I was real impressed to read them.
That was part of the real fun, just to explore some people I didn't even really know, or or people who sort of came up peripherally in reading or a news segment. And I thought to myself, I really want to learn about this person. And, it's funny, but researching for this book really made me start to look at people in my own life, people close to me who I admire. And I started to talk with them in a very real and honest way and say, yeah, I know to me you're this incredible person, but would you mind sharing with me sometimes where you didn't get it right and sometimes where you were confused? And that was just very poignant personally to see that people I admire really struggled and they really were confused about, hey, should I pursue this vocation or not? And I really feel like I messed up here. And so it really humanized both these quite famous and unique people in the world, but also just people I know personally.
So what's one story that really stands out for you among your research that you did?
That's a great question. I guess one that's really been on my heart a lot lately is since with the passing of Chadwick Boseman, the star of the Black Panther film and other great films of 42. In the book, I profile Ryan Coogler, who is the director of Black Panther, as well as a number of other great films. And his story is really profound for me because he never thought he would be a film director. He was really interested in football. That was his passion and what he wanted to pursue. And it was through the impetus and the involvement of a writing teacher and others who encouraged him, combined with some real difficulties and struggles and failures on the football field, that started to redirect his path into filmmaking. And I love that story because sometimes we think of failure as, hey, okay, the way we deal with failure is we just keep doing exactly what we were doing. But one way we could think about failure too is, yes, sometimes it helps. We just have to sort of try again, the same exact thing. But other times failure can redirect us to something we might never have considered, we might never have pursued. And in my own life, I feel that very authentically, where I always wanted to write novels for adults. I wanted to write literary fiction for adults. And that's what I believed was the best kind of literature and writing to do. And I just like rejection across the board, Marianne. Every novel I wrote for adults was just soundly rejected. And then I started to, on a whim and through some real encouragement from a mentor of mine named John Robinson, I started to write for kids. And I started to really get excited about writing, picture books and middle grade books. And I found this deep passion for writing for kids that I told myself I never really considered.
I can't believe that anyone would turn down any of your books. So I'm not believing that. And they probably should take a second look at those. But when you talk about this book, Fantastic Failures, is this primarily for younger audiences or is this for everyone?
Yeah, well, I originally, I always, when I wrote this book and the first in the series, I had my own seventh graders in mind. That was they were on my heart. And then I began to get some responses from adult readers who wrote to me and said, hey, I really appreciated this. And then it kind of dawned on me, and especially when I interacted with, role models of mine, and the more we got real and realizing it is a constant learning process to be okay with rejection and failure and to not let it define us, to not let us shame us and think there's something fundamentally wrong with who I am. And so my hope is that adults find a lot of solace in these stories of people who have failed as well. And in that way, we're all sort of stuck at this weird middle school mindset, right? Where even if, I'm turning 40 and I still feel like I've got a lot to figure out about my identity and who I am. And so these stories speak to me on a personal level. And they let me know there's nothing shamefully wrong about me, even though I might make mistakes. That's the human journey. And so I hope middle school kids really, really find something to grab onto. But I do hope that adult readers see in themselves a reflection of their own potential journey as well.
I can see that easily happening. We're in this age where we have so many people who are redesigning their lives and rediscovering maybe who it is that they are, what makes them happy, because of all the changes that we've had. So I could see where this book would really benefit a lot of people at different age ranges.
Yeah, thank you. And that's my hope, that we are, especially right now in the midst of of a country in upheaval where, we're facing a lot of, wait a minute, who are we and who am I? And we're all asking a lot of those deeper questions that sometimes when life is so busy, we don't really get the chance to, or we feel it sort of tugging on our hearts and our souls a little bit. But we say, you know what, later, I've got to make dinner, I've got to clean this diaper, I've got to, take the trash out, I've got to rush to class or whatever we're doing. But now I think there is that fear that's sort of encroaching on a lot of us. And we're asking, well, wait a minute, how do I deal with this? And what does it mean to not get it right? Or to even parents, when I talk with parents now, a lot of them say, look, before this pandemic, I could really hold things together, but now I'm struggling. And our kids are seeing that. Like when we face difficult things and we can't hold it together, that authenticity shines through. And how do we process that with kids? And so my hope is that some of these stories really speak to that as well.
Well, I think that would take actually a lot of stress off of children, knowing that, hey, my parents, even they have issues. It's human to do that. We're going to have issues too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I have 4 boys at home, 4 young boys, ages 11 to 8 months. And I'll never forget when my oldest son, 11 years old now, when he was young, and I was sort of coming down on him hard, saying, hey, this was not okay. I forget what he even did. Maybe he hit a window with a spatula or something. He did something. And I remember talking to him saying, this is not okay. This is not a good decision. I don't like you that you did this, kind of sternly talking to him. And he got real sad. And then his eyes kind of brightened up and he looked at me and he said, Dad, can you tell me about something really bad you did? And it was that profound moment, where it was that profound moment of connection. Like, okay, I'm hearing you, Dad, telling me I did something wrong. This was not okay. You're upset with me. But what about you? Didn't you ever do anything wrong? And I started to talk to him, and the floodgates were open. I started to tell him all these stories about mistakes I had made, and his face just kind of turned from shame to hope. And it was a really powerful moment for me to see, look, my own kids, the students in the college classes where I teach now, yes, we all want to know what's the right thing to do and how do we do it and what do we need to know. But the other thing we're all deeply craving is, look, tell me where you messed up so I can see that it's okay to make mistakes and I'm going to not do it well, but that it's not the end of the day. It's not the end of the game. I can still keep trying and there's hope, and sort of balancing that. Yes, having a boundary, calling things out for what they are. This is not okay. This is a mistake, but also not saying the end, like that's it. No chance. There's always a chance for the do-over to try again. And I think that's what we're all sort of craving is I messed this up, but is there a do-over? Can I try this again?
I love that because we all are in this state where it's like, you know what? Maybe I didn't like this job I was working where I just, worked 80 hours a week and maybe I want to try something else, been there, done that, got the bumper sticker, want to try to do something else. And I think it gives people a lot of permission to look at what really brings them joy and to follow that.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the hardest things to do. Just this morning, I was teaching a class to my freshmen, and they're in the teaching program here, so they want to be teachers. And they often think, hey, to be a teacher means to address all these standards and the Common Core and all these expectations. And part of what we do is to say, yes, but to be a teacher, if you're really going to be sustained, you have to answer that question. What sparks joy in you? What gives you hope? Why? What excites you? Is there a line you love, a book you love, a film clip you love? Is there an activity you really enjoy? Bring that into the classroom, because if it excites you, it's going to excite students. And I think you're right. We've somehow become so conditioned to this is what's expected and this is what I have to do. And it feels incredibly terrifying to sometimes stop and say, is this really sparking some kind of joy in me? Is it reaching some sort of light that I want to bring to this world and receive from this world in a deeper way? And I think, asking that question is scary, but also deeply, deeply essential.
In your book, you there's a quote and you say, failure and struggle can lead us to new paths. What do you mean by that?
I think, when we fail and when we struggle, I think the tendency, a lot of us, and I know particularly my middle school students, the tendency is to somehow see failure and struggle as a verdict. In other words, like, okay, I'm struggling, therefore it must mean that this is not what I'm supposed to do. We sort of see struggle and interpret it as I'm doing something wrong, or I'm in the wrong place, I'm making the wrong decision, I've gone astray, I've got to get back on some other thing. And sometimes failure and struggle, if we're willing to sort of sit through them and not react right away, they can lead us to these incredible new ways of being in the world, incredible new ways of thinking. And I think one of the most profound things in life that I have seen and what I admire most in people is to watch a person fail, to watch them get rejected and struggle, and to see them resist shame. And that, to me, that's right there the definition of courage in my book, the definition of beauty. Is, I think, we tend to, in our culture, hold up the victory, the first place finisher, the perfect dance routine, the Oscar winning film. And those are great things. I'm not saying we shouldn't admire those things, but to see someone struggle and be rejected and fail, and to still hold their head high and to not give in to shame, I think that deserves an Oscar. And I think when failure and struggle teach us in that way, they sort of ignite a deeper sense of who we are as humans. And that's what I think makes us really easy and inspiring to connect with. So a good case in point would be someone like Mr. Rogers, right? Like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. When he talks on his show about emotion and he talks about being open with kids, that is such an endearing quality because we're just not used to that. We're used to people, posting on social media, here's me having it all together. Here's me in my moment of victory. And then you have Mr. Rogers saying, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be scared. I get scared too. And that's endearing because it's so surprisingly real.
Yes, it's so authentic to go, hey, you know what? We have this emotions and these feelings other than how people are trying to portray like perfect life with no bumps in the road, which, if you look at it, that in itself is a bump. There are problems with that,
That's a great point. Yeah. And then we don't get, when we do that, I feel like, and I've tried much of my life to do that. And then you realize that it's really a lonely path when we sort of feel like we've got to hold it all together. It's very lonely to travel that way because people don't get access to us. They don't hear us. And obviously we have to do it with people who are trustworthy and sort of can meet us and really respect us. But it's much more powerful to be able to share in that honest way. And that's what strikes me, when I research for even more fantastic failures, a lot of these people who did amazing things, they always seem to have just one or two people that let them be who they really are or encourage them to be who they really are. So it was never a solo endeavor. It was always one or two people there saying, look, I know this is what you want and you failed, but what about this? I see this in you. Why not try this? Or I believe in you. Why not try again? That person who's there to see the struggle and say, it's okay, and I'm still with you. I'm not mad at you. I'm in your corner. And so I think we all need those one or two people, who are ready to do that for us. And if we don't have them, I think it becomes paramount to say, who in my life can I start to trust more with some of who I really am? And hopefully that supportive person emerges.
Well, why don't you share with us Lois Jensen's story and why her story is so impactful for young people?
Lois Jensen, her story is profoundly powerful to me. So the first time I sort of got to know who this person is my wife and I, a long time ago, we went to see the movie North Country. And, she is this person who is working in a coal mine, and it's a man's man kind of job. She is someone who's, she needed to make money for her son. She's a single mom, and the coal mine was hiring, and they were paying well. So she said, "Okay, I'm gonna do this job, and I'm going to try this. She gets there, and the men belittle her. They ridicule her. They attack her physically, emotionally, mentally, and she is really struggling. And finally, after years of mistreatment, she leaves, and it's only later that she starts with other women who have also been abused and really hurt in this mind. She starts this class action lawsuit, and year after year, the lawsuit's frustrated. They lose in court over and over and over again. Some women leave the class action lawsuit. They figure this is just too hard. We can't do this. Lois Jensen stays with it. Eventually, the owners of that mine, the people who ran that business, the men who mistreated her, were eventually held to account. And her story is inspiring to me, and particularly to young people, because sometimes they feel as though they are deeply mistreated. It could be a small thing or a huge thing, like in Lois Jensen's life. And we want to sometimes fall it back and say, you know what, it's okay. I just tough it out. And here's a woman who tried to, quote unquote, tough it out for years, and eventually said, no, I refuse to be treated as less than I am. And she fought back. And it wasn't a quick victory. And it took a long time to change the minds and hearts and attitudes of the courtroom, and also the people just in her community. But eventually she did. And that's just a powerful story to I think, to people to say, look, when you are treated less than human, that is never okay. And it might feel like no one's listening to you at first, but you continue to take up your case. You enjoin others to see who you are and fight with you. And eventually justice will be served.
That has to be so empowering for young people to hear that their voice matters, and people at any age, really, to hear that their voice matters so much, and to always do what's right.
Yeah. And I think that's when we see it. And I think this stories like that, the more we see it, I think the more we realize it's possible. And I think sometimes we tend to give up on things because we don't have any models to say, look, this was really hard to fight to be treated fairly. This was really hard to be respected, or this was really hard to achieve this goal. And when we see the more stories we hear about people who didn't come fast and easy, but they did not give up on their own humanity and on their own vision of justice and meaning for their lives, I think it emboldens us to say, look, it might be long, but I'll get there. Sort of that Martin Luther King Jr. quote that is, been shared widely now, that the arc of history is long, but it bends toward justice. And I think it's profoundly true that it sometimes seems like this is just unfair, this isn't right. And I think justice will be served if we continue to not give up, just in the way Lois Jensen did.
In your book, you also talk about Socrates, and I was really surprised what was written about him. I'd love for you to share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, he was just so fun to research because, in my classes, I often use a tool called the Socratic Seminar, which, where students sit more in a circle and we talk, and instead of the teacher being the expert, in a Socratic seminar, everyone has equal weight, equal power to be able to share an idea. And the teacher's not there to say, no, that's actually incorrect, because on the textbook on page 42, the teacher's there to facilitate, but the students become experts of their own lives and their own knowledge. And so Socrates, he believed, wisdom was everywhere, truth was everywhere, not just in the so-called experts. And yet it was fascinating because he was in many ways a deep failure. We still mention his name, and you hear his name, you think, oh, wisdom and truth and all this. But, just learning about his actual life was fascinating, where, in his day, there's a lot of primary source material that says he was quite ugly according to the beauty standards of his day. He was not sort of this handsome, wonderful guy. He smelled awful, particularly bad. And that when he would come around, the stench he carried with him was just profound. He wasn't necessarily someone that we'd see today, sort of a polished person we want at the dinner table with us. He would have been someone we'd say, I don't really want this guy at my dinner table. And yet his legacy is profoundly successful. And you know, as I just said, we use things like the Socratic method in schools all over the country. And so his was a fascinating story, because here's a guy that in many ways sort of seemed like a failure in his time. He was even killed for his beliefs. You know, they forced him to drink hemlock, and he died. And so it seemed like, wow, they put his ideas of truth out. They killed him, done. And yet his legacy is incredibly enduring. And so I just think that's a powerful story, where sometimes in our context, our little corner of the world, we might seem like, hey, we're persona non grata, but our legacy might become very different.
I think that is so important. How often do people feel like, gosh, I could be doing more, or maybe I should be doing more with their life, when maybe what they're doing is exactly where they should be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, you know, so often we are, you know, whether it's through advertising or our peers, our colleagues, others, there's just our families, our culture. There's so many pressures saying, essentially, you should pretty much always be doing or getting something you aren't or don't have. And I think the more we can speak back to that and say, whoa, 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 how can every day I be doing the wrong thing and be buying the wrong thing and not, you know, that just cannot be true. And so I think it's profound and important to remember maybe who we are is okay. And maybe we don't have to constantly change ourselves to fit somebody else's standard.
I love that. You know, be uniquely you, and not really worry too much about all the chatter that's out there that, hey, you should look like this or dress this way or present yourself this way to be successful. Success comes in many different packages.
Yeah. Here. I agree wholeheartedly.
Well, what advice can you give our listeners to kind of encourage them that, you know what, hey, everyone's going through a tough time right now. It's okay. You know, failure happens on the way to success all the time.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know, and this is what I work with my college students, sometimes big ideas can be hard to get ourselves around practically. And so I'm all about trying to think through, so practically, what can we do? How can we, you know, live a little bit differently? And so I believe in really small things, like, you know, wherever we are right now, and I sort of make my college students do this, and hopefully they don't find it too annoying, but literally stand up right now if you can, or if unable, just where you're sitting, closing your eyes and taking 3 huge deep breaths, just closing eyes, no screens, no other outside external influences, 3 huge deep breaths, and just exhaling really slowly. Things like before bed at night, asking myself, did I do what is in me? Just a quick check. Did I do what is really in me? Or did I do what kind of I felt forced to do or other people made me do? And then I sometimes think at night, what's one small thing I could do tomorrow because it's in me, because I love it, because it brings joy, because it's part of who I am. And then writing that down, like, here's one small thing I'm going to do. I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk and not look at my phone. I'm going to, you know, write a letter, even though everyone's on Facebook, or I'm going to refrain from posting something or retweeting, or, you know, whatever it is that reconnects us with who we really are. Just one practical step in a day, one small step. I think over time, those small practical steps really can build and create some profound momentum.
How important is that? Well, Luke, my goodness, we could talk forever. I felt that your book, Fantastic Failures, was a great read for any age. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
Yeah, so I do have a website at lukewreynolds.com, LUKEWREYNOLDS.com. And then the books are available in most retailing bookstores or online at all the normal places. And then always via email. I'm always happy to hear from listeners. And if anybody or reader wants to send a quick note, you can always feel free to shoot me an email at lwreynolds@gmail.com. And I always respond. It's always great to hear and connect.
Well, Luke, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thanks so much, Marianne, for having me and for the wonderful conversation.
Well, thank you, Luke. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Fantastic Failures. Fantastic Failures is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle, so you can download it and start reading it right now. Again, if you'd like to connect with Luke, you can at lukewreynolds.com for more information. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.